Greetings, everybody. I'm Curtis Manning. I'm a history professor here at the college, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the 17th season of the New Day's History Lecture Series. We have an extra special lecture tonight. I'm sure all of you know that Michele, who is the producer of the History Lecture Series, as well as an author, as well as a number of administrative roles at the college. But she has been my boss for the last several years with the History Lecture Series. I've been reduced to just a worker. And so she has made a lot of other people give these lectures. But to date, despite all her great work and dedication, she has never given a lecture herself. And so, to kind of even things up then, tonight, Michele will give her first lecture on the Star-Spangled Banner and the song upon which it was based. This is unique in two ways and really emblematic of the History Lecture Series. First off, it is a new musical genre, a new historical genre that we invented called musical history, which combines good, solid academic history with also fantastic music. So we'll see how that goes. And it is also accidentally, but we're going to take credit for it anyway, a great example of how every once in a while the History Lecture Series dovetails perfectly with what's going on in the world today. So of course we've had in the last week or two, the Star-Spangled Banner, the National Anthem, has taken a central role in the politics of the day. And so now it's the duty of the History Lecture Series to kind of show how it has done similar things throughout history. And so if anybody wants to protest, that'll be great. But just no shootings, that's all we ask. You know, we don't want protests to go that far with the other bad politics we're talking about tonight. So, all right, so it is my honor to introduce Michele Meyer.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. I know this is not the usual way to start a lecture, but I would like to take a moment of silence given things that have happened recently in our society. We've had so many areas that have been devastated by hurricanes, and we all know what that's like. And we had a horrible shooting yesterday in Las Vegas. If you wouldn't mind just spending a moment of silence with me in representative of those people who lost their lives and the people who are still rebuilding. All right. Now, we're not going to start with song. I am going to start with something that is pretty interesting. We're going to talk about what an anthem actually is. Most people think that an anthem is just a song, and we've heard some reports of people saying it's just a song, but it's really not. It is something that is supposed to be rousing and uplifting, and it's for a cause or a specific group. The first anthem that we know of modern day was done in England, and they called it the Anthem of Anthems. It was in the mid-1700s that they adopted God Save the King as their anthem, and that kind of pushed everyone else to look for their own anthem. The other popular anthems that are out today that we all probably are familiar with, especially from our childhood, is the Marines hymn and Anchors Away, The Army Goes Rolling Along, and U.S. Air Force song. Tonight I'm going to talk about a few specific things regarding our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. We want to talk about the flag that was constructed, that was the inspiration for the poem, and the original poem that was written by Francis Scott Key. Then we'll get into the tune that was adopted to turn the poem to music, and the controversy that has kind of followed the song since its inception to present day. We're going to take a look at a very, very special banner that was created. And to understand the importance of and the staying power of the song that was chosen as our national anthem, we've got to start from the very beginning. We need to look at all the peripheral circumstances that were happening at the time to understand what made it what it is. And it all started with a major and a flag maker and a very significant flag that was made by special request. The commander at Fort McHenry in Baltimore, which is the Star Fort that you all may be familiar with, wanted a flag that was large enough to be seen across Chesapeake Bay. It's a pretty big request. So he approached, knowing that the fort was more than likely a British target, he approached the commander of the Baltimore defenses in July of 1813 and asked for a special flag. And he approached him by saying, quote, "We, sir, are ready at Fort McHenry to defend Baltimore against invading by the enemy, except that we have no suitable ensign to display over the Star Fort. And it is my desire to have a flag so large that the British will have no difficulty seeing it from a distance." He knew that it was a special request, and he knew that it would take a special flag maker to complete this request. He wanted 15 stars and 15 stripes to represent the states at the time. And when he completed it, when it was completed, he wanted it to measure 30 feet by 42 feet. It's huge. The stars on the flag measured 2 feet. That's about in diameter, 2 feet in diameter. Huge. And they were made of cotton, which was it was considered a luxury item at that time. So this is pretty, I guess, magnanimous thing to choose cotton to put on this flag that was going to be, displayed there. The flag maker that they commissioned was a professional flag maker. She was a 29-year-old widow. Her name was Mary Pickersgill. Pickersgill was paid $405.90 to create this flag. And it's reported that she enlisted the help of her daughter, 3 nieces, and a 13-year-old indentured servant. And her mother reportedly helped here and there. It took them a total of 6 weeks, 10-hour days to make this flag. And they started off in her home, which we know that her home was probably not big enough to make a flag. They decided to move it across the street to a brewery, Plaget's Brewery. Now the house where she started the construction of the flag is now today a private museum that is called the Flag House. And it should be noted that the flag, when complete, took 11 men to hoist. It was pretty heavy. It was made of 300 yards of English bunting, wool bunting, and of course the stars made out of cotton. What most people don't know is that there was a second flag, identical, made of a much smaller scale. It would measure 17 by 25, and Mary Pickersgill was paid another $168.54 for the making of that flag. The reason that flag was made was because the garrison flag, the original flag, was much too heavy to be supported on a flagpole in stormy weather. It would snap the flagpole in half. So they made what they called the storm flag. This is a picture of Mary Pickersgill's flag, Star-Spangled Banner. This is the earliest known picture of the flag. It was hanging on the Boston Navy Yard on the side of the building in 1874 when this is snapped. And I want to draw your attention to 2 areas. One right here, where there's a piece missing, and this star that is missing. I want you to also know that the flag did not go through the battle. It was a stormy night, the night of the battle. They would have had the storm flag up. This flag lost its pieces parts because Armistead's wife, Louise, decided that after he died and the flag was in her possession, that she would honor him and the people who had died protecting it by giving away small pieces of it. And so little by little, they cut out that little piece here, And actually, it's all along this side because it's much smaller now than it was in its original state. And they would hand out these pieces in memoriam. It was a practice that went on for 2 generations, all the way down through 1880, when the last piece was given away by Armistead's grandson. The tradition was something that, of course, may have ruined an artifact of history, but I think it has a pretty interesting story to it. And the Smithsonian has made great efforts to retrieve the pieces parts that have been dispersed. And they've gotten all of the pieces except for about a dozen. The star has never been located, but there are 12 or so pieces that are in private collections and in private museum collections that have not come back to the flag yet. And so they've left it as it is. It gives it a little bit of an interesting story. The Smithsonian got the flag in 1907 from Armistead's descendants, and it was on loan. And then in 1912, the flag was given to the Smithsonian as a gift. And they then started to try to collect all the pieces, parts, and do some reparations on the flag. And they hired someone special to do that in-house, but it took a long, long time, and it was a very expensive process back then. In the early 30s, it was a total of $1,800 that was spent to try to refurbish the flag. They had to replace the bunting on the back of it and try to stitch together the pieces of the ones that they had retrieved. Now I'm going to take you on through the timeline of the Star-Spangled Banner. And we know that the flag was delivered in August of 1813 to the fort. Then in September of 1814, a little over a year later, British soldiers engaged in a brisk land battle. However, they did not secure Baltimore. It was still in the hands of those people who lived there and that precious fort. There was, however, a British ship that was anchored in the harbor, and it possessed prisoners of war. There was one particular prisoner on the ship, Dr. William Beans, who was a pretty important person, so they sent some people out to negotiate his release. John Skinner was one of those people. That's the top photo. He was at the time in charge of prisoner exchange, and Francis Scott Key was a lawyer who they brought in to make sure that the exchange happened like it should. They were aboard that ship from September 7th through the 13th. They actually negotiated a win, and they were willing to release Dr. Beans. The only problem is, while they were on that ship, they found out that the British were ready to invade the fort. So they could not very well let them loose. They put them back on their sloop, sent them out back into Chesapeake Bay, and they were held under guard, military guard, about 8 miles from the fort. And then the bombardment of Fort McHenry began. On the night of September 13th into September 14th, for a total of 24 hours, the British forces fired 200-pound bombs and rockets. They waited for the removal of that flag. Of course, it was the smaller storm flag, but they still wanted that flag down. That would mean the surrender of Fort McHenry. But through the night, Key and Skinner and his small entourage watched, kind of in between the boats that were throwing all these bombs and the fort that was being bombarded. And so it was very foggy, it was very smoky, the rockets were going off. I can't even imagine being in the midst of that and witnessing that. And the entire time, he thought to himself that we were not going to win this. He knew in his heart there was no possible way the fort was going to survive this. And he was noted as saying afterwards in an interview, it seemed as though Mother Earth had opened and was vomiting shot and shell in a sheet of fire and brimstone. Quite a vivid picture. What you see here is an aquatint that was done in about 1814. It was hand-colored, and the caption at the bottom states that there were 1,500 to 1,800 shells thrown in 24 hours. And there's a little piece right in here where you can see the little sloop and the guard in between everything. It's kind of an amazing thought to know that somebody witnessed that. So on the morning of September 14th, after he and his companions watched through the night, getting small glimpses of the flag and the fort through the fog and the smoke, the storm flag was removed. Not that he knew that. He got those little glimpses of the flag, and then as the sun broke, that garrison flag was raised up that post. And that enormous flag was seen over Chesapeake Bay by those British ships and by Skinner and by Key. And he was so inspired in that moment. He knew Fort McHenry was safe. And he decided to put pen to paper. He had a letter in his pocket, pulled it out, started jotting down his thoughts in a poem. He titled the poem, which contains 4 verses. Most people do not know that. Defense of Fort McHenry, on the back of that letter. This is a copy of the original that he penned. It is held in the Smithsonian Institute. And what I'd like to do while that is up there is read the words of that to you in its original form, if I can get my hands to it. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming? And the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I'll give you the words clearly. On the shore, dimly seen through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes, what is that which the breeze o'er the towering sleep, as it fitfully blows, half conceals, half discloses? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines in the stream. 'Tis the star-spangled banner, oh, long may it wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And where is that land so vauntingly swore, that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and their war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just. And this be our motto, in God we trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Quite a poignant poem. It should be noted that that third stanza, the one at the top, is customarily left out if the entire song is sung, not for any other reason than in respect and courtesy to the British, because that is what the third phrase is talking about. Now, it's uncertain, but assumed, that John Skinner released the poem as a handbill. It went from that to the newspapers, and the newspapers published it with a note underneath it that said, to the tune of To an Anacreon in Heaven. And we're going to get into that song in just a bit. It's been stated that dramatic and inspired creation of song forged in the heat of battle helped it achieve instant popularity. Debate has ensued about whether he intended it as a poem or wanted it to be music. I will say that he had previously written another poem that was put to the same tune. So it's very possible that he had the tune in mind when he wrote it, because it fits it very, very well. It was, in fact, put to that song, and the song is from a popular gentleman's music club, the Anacreonic Society, which was used repeatedly. This song was used repeatedly throughout the 18th century with lyrics that changed depending on what was going on that particular day. And thus began the controversy, almost from the minute the song arrived. We're going to get back to the controversy in a bit, but before we do that, I want to tell you all about what was going on at the time of her release. You know, there were several other songs, patriotic songs, that were very, very popular at the time. They included the Star-Spangled Banner, of course, God Save the King, the Marseillaise, which was the French Revolutionary Anthem, Hail Columbia, My Country 'Tis Thee, and Yankee Doodle Dandy, which was kind of funny because that was meant as a slight. But we adapted it and made it what we wanted. Eventually, God Save the King was kind of dropped from those top 5 because My Country 'Tis Thee is in there. And as was a practice during that time, because there were no copyright laws, tunes were used over and over again with different lines. If you'll give me a chance, I'll explain what I mean when I sing to you, God Save Our King. I want you to think of My Country 'Tis Thee. God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. It's the same tune. We just reverted it because there wasn't that copyright thing. There were top 5s. They were published in these musics, of course, but they were published in this end one over here, which is like a compilation of a bunch of patriotic songs. It was a movement almost at that time to stir patriotism and keep it going. And so these songs were very, very popular. And he could have chosen any of those to put this music, to put the poem to use music. But instead, he chose the Anacreon, To an Anacreon in Heaven, or the Anacreonic song. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that right now. Excuse me. This was the anthem of the Anacreonic Society. It was a society that was established in England in 1775. And they were, and this was a quote, bawdy, boozy ballad of a convivial gentleman's club. It was actually an amateur musician's club. They met in a tavern because that was a convenient place for them. And it was dedicated to wit and harmony and the god of wine. Their primary goal, beyond talk and companionship, was to promote music. That was the biggest thing for them. And so their normal venue was to have a concert. And after their concert, they would transition from the concert to their companionship and then Quran. That's when that Anacreonic song was sung. And it was a very, it was more of a prestigious song than a drinking song. There was, despite the high standards of the club, because the club was composed, excuse me, the club was composed of barristers, doctors, other professional men. They were all in there because they had a love of music, a love of companionship, and of course a love of drinking. That kind of dubbed the song as a drinking song, not only in England, but here. And that's why a lot of people will say our national anthem is nothing more than a drinking song. Well, it kind of really isn't. The song served as that transition point that I had told you about. And one of the members at the time noted as saying, it was not a barroom ballad, a drinking ditty to be chorused with glasses swung in the air in rhythm, but convivial in a special and stately way. Considering the tune was very popular at the time, makes one wonder, although there is no proof of this, whether our Mr. Key was part of the Anacreontic Society, since he was so familiar with that tune. And at first I thought about singing this tune myself to you, but in order for you to get a real taste of what the song was and how it was presented, I've chosen to present it by a gentleman. Can you play the video for me? Realizing that it's more of an operatic approach to the song than, chugging along and singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall. A little different. Now, the popularity of the song completely grew. You've got to imagine the atmosphere. There was a big win in Baltimore over the Star Fort, having that big flag up there, and because they had witnessed before that defeats and the burning of the White House. There was victory in the air after this. We finally got it. And the song had been published in 18 different newspapers around the states. So it gained its popularity because it was written at such an important time in history. It was normally done at rallies at that time. The Star-Spangled Banner was played in political arenas all the time, at rallies for that. Despite the battle of the top five that we had mentioned before, the Star-Spangled Banner was winning the race in this period. Even despite the sore feelings of the former Confederates, they turned to the Star-Spangled Banner as a familiar and comforting tone. Key's song sounded when the flag came under attack at Fort Sumter and was played by federal troops as they entered Savannah, Richmond, and New Orleans. But the controversy, we get back to that. Since the 1931 designation of the national anthem, the song has been under fire from critics demanding a new anthem. But it's really been under fire since the very beginning, because there were those who didn't want it to be the most prominent song. They kept going back and forth with that top five. I wanted this one, I wanted that one. My country 'tis of thee. Hail Columbia. 1880 saw Congress stall attempts to regulate the use of the flag with the Star-Spangled Banner due to fear of not being able to use it at those rallies. The Founding Fathers even bickered back and forth after breaking from British rule about the meaning of the flag and the Star-Spangled Banner, especially in the late 1890s when talk increased about naming a national anthem. 1889 saw businesses take advantage of the printing revolution. And they distributed pamphlets with sing our patriotic tunes. The big five were in those all the time, with other patriotic songs that were minor ditties at the time, or songs that were the tune of one with words of another. It was very, very common for the words to be rewritten during that time and use the tunes from old. There was a move by George Balch in New York. He was on the City Board of Education. He was an auditor. And he got involved in the push for a song, and I love his quote, that would stamp indelibly on the hearts of all present the real meaning and significance of the occasion when having school ceremonies to instill patriotism in students. They demanded the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner at the start of every function beginning in 1896. Despite that push for patriotism, the choice of national anthem still floundered amongst those top five. The practice of playing the Star-Spangled Banner in the opening day of the baseball season was established in the mid-1890s. The military was perhaps the most influential in the regulation of the song. In the late 1800s, the use of Key's creation when the Secretary of the Navy, Benjamin Tracy, initiated a standardization drive. He included, in a general order, number 374 of 1889, the playing of the Star-Spangled Banner in the morning, Hail Columbia in the evening, and the decorum of facing the flag and saluting for all military personnel. Throughout time, civil religion has replaced spiritual icons with the flag, the founding fathers, and the Declaration of Independence. National anthems have served as conduits for the crossover from religion to patriotism. In the early days of the Great Depression, when so many people were struggling with so much, the federal government was overwhelmed, and they needed to manufacture patriotism with the choice of an anthem. It was noticed that Key's creation gained instant popularity, which it did, and remained cherished by enough people over time to earn its spot as the sonic embodiment of nationhood. Quite a quote. While Congress picked the design of the flag in 1777, it was modified in 1794, and approved the Great Seal in 1782, the approval of the national anthem would wait some 117 years after Key penned his poem. There are many renditions, changes over the time. You and I both know singers take their lead with it. They do crazy things with the song. Interject runs where there aren't any. Opera singers sing it in a more dignified tone. Every genre of music has changed it in some way, whether it be the tempo, adding things to it, giving it a specific sound, so it's country or blues or jazz. Then we get to present day controversy, and we're only going to delve in this for a little bit. There's a debate nationwide about patriotism and protest, and it's been brought to the forefront by members of NFL teams. They've made sure that our national anthem is in the crossfires of their protest, even though they claim that the protest is about social injustice. The national anthem is the venue they chose to make that known. The question's been posed as to whether or not our national anthem is racist. There have been articles written, many articles written, regarding the fact that he was a slave owner. He was also a city prosecutor in Washington, D.C., and he prosecuted slaves as part of his job. There were articles that abound regarding the pro-slavery stand of the Star-Spangled Banner, perceived today. There are countless articles written to rebuff that notion. The New York Times published an article that states, and I quote, "The social context of the song comes from the age of slavery, but the song itself isn't about slavery. The reference to slaves in that third stanza is about the use and, in some sense, the manipulation of Black Americans to fight for the British with the promise of freedom. The American forces included African Americans as well as whites. The term free men, whose heroism is celebrated in the fourth verse, would have encompassed both. Patriotism seems to win, though. This is a quote from a book that I read that I got a lot of my information from, by Mark Ferris. Somehow, throughout 2 centuries of change, the Star-Spangled Banner captivated the American spirit. But why? It is somewhat miraculous that an allegedly hard-to-sing, anachronistic composition born of a long-forgotten conflict that seems to glorify war and consists of an unmemorable poetry remains the official anthem of the United States of America. I want to mention, before I close, that John Philip Sousa, who was the director of the Marine Band, at the time of the designation of our anthem, was asked to join a contest for a national anthem. And I love what this man says because I think it embodies the song itself. Nations will seldom obtain good national anthems by offering prizes for them. The occasion and the man must meet. And thus it did. After years of controversy, the Star-Spangled Banner was officially named the national anthem of the United States on March 3rd, 1931. I want to end my presentation, if you will, by standing and joining in singing our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at our twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so